as the backup plan, basically I let them know during the interview that I will give everyone else's contact information so that they can look to each other as backups if they're available. So, oh, and the criminal background check, there are ways to do it on your own, and then also care.com does a minimal one with your subscription. So, I think that's also helpful. I'm ready for the next slide.
Okay. I think, yes, that's great. Training a PCA. You have to look at your role as a boss-like position. So when someone first comes to work for you, you want to set up protocols for what you want them to do while on the job. Things like routines of the morning and evening and what your expectations are, the time scheduling as far as getting dressed and showering and everything. You want them to know up front, what does this look like? What do I need to be doing? What are my roles and tasks while I'm here? Determine the steps, and this kind of goes on what Katrina just said, determine the steps they should take for calling in sick. Oftentimes, calling in sick, as Katrina said, that will leave us in bed all day long, and that's not acceptable. So there has to be some sort of process for letting us know who's going to be replacing them, or I set it up where I actually find the backup people. So what does that look like? You want to be very specific and let them know that if this is something that happens often, that it's not going to be a position that they're going to be able to keep for very long. Give them contact information should there be an emergency. If you were to be rendered unconscious, Lord help us, but if that were to happen, then they need to know who they should call for an emergency situation, such as your family or a specific doctor that you want to contact. One thing that I want to touch on here is how do you overcome your fears of working with someone that isn't your parent or other loved one? And what I always tell people is that as early as you can, you want to hire a PCA to come and work in your home, even before you move out and become independent. It's important that you get used to other people providing your care instead of your parents. And you can practice this by training a friend or a family member who's never provided your care before. You can teach them how to help you, and that way you can get used to having a PCA in your life. Train someone without your current caregiver present, meaning when you have a friend or family member come over, don't have your mom standing by giving instructions. It's important that you learn those skills of expressing yourself and letting other people know what your needs are. You want to make sure that you've got the verbiage to let others know what your needs are. And Katrina, if you want to continue with this.
Sure. I think that is a fantastic idea for how to sort of develop your skills in training people. I sort of just had to do it by the seat of my pants with my mom there in college. And as I grew up and went through college, I sort of learned what I needed and what I didn't need. And now that I know what I need, I have a very specific process I take with training my attendants, which is I find that it's easier for them to learn by seeing rather than me just talking them through it. So I will have either a current attendant or my mom show them the entire process while I also talk them through it. I like to make sure that I'm talking so that they don't think that I'm incapable of directing my care. I want them to be able to look to me once they're on their own. But then I have her show everything so that they can physically see it. And then I have them come back one more time, and they do it with me directing them, but my mom or another attendant is there to sort of assist and show if there's some problem, which there invariably is something that goes wrong that we weren't expecting, then the other person can show them and step in. And at that point, everybody seems to really be comfortable with it. And so I found that that sort of is the best way for me to train them. One thing that it's important to remind people is to be patient with your attendants. You're used to your mom doing it or your dad, and they've been doing it for years, and they're great. And these people, for a lot of them, it's their first time ever trying it. And so I think that being sort of supportive and patient in the process helps it move along a lot. If you're sort of antagonistic and mean, you're not going to get anywhere. And so I think it's really important to take a deep breath, remember that they're trying to help you, and just let them work at it. But at the same time, don't lower your expectations just because of that. I think that you want your makeup done a certain way, you want your hair done a certain way, you want to wear what you want to wear. And just because they're new doesn't mean you can't have that. You just need to be patient in the process. Most of my attendants are not certified in any way. I have, like I said, a lot of college students. So being patient and supportive sort of makes the process go a lot more smoothly. Okay, next slide, please.
Katrina, it's funny that you just said most of them are not certified, and I have to be so honest with all of you. I have an afternoon caregiver, and when I interviewed her, she walked in and she had awesome hair, and I knew instantly that I was going to hire her because I knew she could do my hair really well, and she just fit the bill. So it's funny how you know these things, but that kind of continues on to managing a PCA, which is our next slide. And what I put is, what are some ways to develop a quality working relationship? Obviously, the people that are going to be providing your care are working with you in the most intimate of ways, and it's so important that you be cheerful. And by that, I don't mean that you need to be Sally Sunshine all the time, but nobody wants to come to a job where they're working with a grouch and somebody who's down all the time. And so I think it's so important for you to maintain just a positive attitude. And as Katrina said, being so patient with your caregivers, developing a caring relationship. You want to show your employee how much you appreciate them. And ways that I do that, I give bonuses as much as I can. I give paid time off whenever possible. There is nothing like a $5 Starbucks card. It goes a long way. You can think of creative ways that may not be financial, but ways that you can really show someone what they mean to you and how much their care helps you to succeed. And I say, I'm such a person, I'm very sensitive to how people talk to me, and so in return, I'm very sensitive about how I talk to other people. So using a pleasant tone is so easy when we're frustrated just to snap at somebody, especially if, unfortunately, it happens to our family members. And if they're not doing something that we want them to do, we just kind of snap. But you can't do that with a PCA. You have to always use a very respectful tone of voice. Unfortunately, there are times when a PCA will be fired, and it's inevitable. And one of the things that you need to make sure is that you have an interim person available, because obviously you don't want to fire someone and be left in the cold, for lack of a better term. It's important that you've got someone that you can turn to when that firing process has to take place. Katrina?
Yeah. Let's see. As far as the backup plan, I just wanted to talk really quickly about something very different that I did in college, just to share it as an idea. I think it works well for people in college, which is, when I was in college, I had about 10 different girls helping me who were also students that lived on campus, most of them in my dorm. And instead of having them sign up for the same shift every week, they actually would pick their shift on Sunday night for the week. And that way, people that had a test one day didn't have to work that day, when they normally would, and it worked out very well, although I will say it was a little stressful because I didn't always find people on Sunday. Sometimes I found someone for Tuesday night on Monday night. But I think that if you're in college or in a place where there's a lot of people around, that's one flexible way of having sort of a different backup plan. The only other thing I would say on this is with filing a PC, you have to figure out where your limit is. Do you have sort of a 3 strikes you're out policy? Is there something that someone's going to do that they need to be fired right away? If they just leave you in bed and give you no explanation whatsoever, is that it right there? You need to sort of set up that plan before it happens, if at all possible, so that you're not wavering over it. And you need to respect yourself enough to know that you don't deserve to be treated that way and that you don't have to do that. But, as Angela said, make sure that there's somebody else to fill in. So, okay, next slide, please.
Funding a PCA. Vocational rehab programs, that's what paid for my caregiving while I was in college. Texas Rehabilitation Commission was what it was called at the time. They provided a certain number of hours a day for me to receive attendant care. This works great, but once you make a certain amount of money, as Vance said, once you cross over that threshold, then you no longer qualify and you've got to go to an out-of-pocket. And he went over some really great ways for creative thinking as far as paying someone out of pocket. Annie, can you touch on the Medicaid waiver program for us?
Actually, I'm going to defer to Jody Wolf, who's our National Director of Clinical Programs and a licensed social worker, who can talk just a little bit about Medicaid waiver. Jody, are you on? Or I'll talk about it. So we're actually not going to go into a lot of detail about this because Medicaid waiver programs vary from state to state, and some of the availability of state programs will likely be changing in the coming months. But a lot of people in our community do qualify for services through Medicaid waiver programs, and in some instances, those programs actually afford better benefits than private health care insurance. So we would encourage you in your state to learn whether or not you may be eligible for the Medicaid waiver program. And if you are eligible, you may want to do a side-by-side comparison of the Medicaid program and what implications that would have for other benefits that you receive versus your current health care. If you have questions about this, we encourage you to call your local MDA office and talk to your healthcare services coordinators or speak to your MDA clinic team. The clinic director, the social workers, and the nurses in the MDA clinics are frequently very knowledgeable and well-versed on what resources are available in the state. So I think that's all we'll say about that because it's so state-specific.
Annie, Jody does have a few extra comments to make here real quick.
Sorry, my mic wasn't working. To participate in the waiver program, you have to be medically qualified, certified for the waiver's institutional level of care, meaning you need daily assistance with a certain number of tasks that could require like a nursing home level of care. You also choose to enroll in the waiver as a way to support you in your home environment and provide those extra services to help you succeed in the community and to avoid an institutional or nursing home placement. And you must be financially eligible based on income and assets. And I just want to encourage everyone that even if you're not sure if you qualify for a Medicaid waiver, to look into it. And that also waivers sometimes have long waiting lists that can be years long. So look into this type of program long before you actually need the support.
Thank you. Okay, next slide, please. Or actually, Katrina, do you have anything to add to that?
I just had two very quick things. I wanted to share that I'm using both out-of-pocket and then also I have a roommate who assists me on weekday evenings with dinner and at bedtime. And financially, I found that much easier because I already had to have a place to live. So if you have the bedroom there, it's a nice way to sort of do it. I also pay for her food as part of it. And so it's kind of a great deal for both of us. And it also makes sure that there's somebody around to help you.